A while back I just had the realization that I hadn't seen Keira Knightley in anything in years, so I looked her up and saw this was coming out. It looked pretty promising. Now, I had no idea who Colette was, and didn't look into it before watching this either. But apparently she was a French writer, and turns out this is not the first movie adaptation of her life. There's been a few, but I went into this knowing nothing, and this thing just immediately put me in a good mood. It has this kind of magical, upbeat vibe to it. Even when things aren't going that well for her, it still doesn't feel like a bummer. This movie actually never feels like a bummer. And Keira Knightley is as charming as ever. I mean, she's just fantastic in this. And Dominic West is really good too. And their dynamic and chemistry is great. They basically carry this movie. Well, maybe that's a bit unfair because the writing is pretty damn good too. It also looks pretty nice. And the attention to detail in the production design is stunning. There's a million little things I noticed that most movies probably wouldn't have bothered with. Because they don't really matter, but they do add a little bit of flavor and authenticity to it. And the story itself, the life of this woman in the late 19th, early 20th century France, is fascinating. Because she was apparently a really strong-willed woman who did things her way. Not an easy thing to do back then, but she did it and didn't care what anyone thought. She's essentially a country girl at heart who doesn't fit in with high society. But she sorta makes society fit in with her through her books. One thing I thought was kinda glanced over though, was the controversies surrounding her work. Because at the time there had to have been a bigger fuss about the kind of books she wrote. But there's very little mention of that. They kinda just focus on the positives. I mean, there's drama in the movie and struggles, but that mostly has to do with the marriage and her private life. And I guess that's fine. It kept the whole thing concise and focused, and it paid off too, because this thing has excellent pacing. It never feels boring or even close to it. It always finds a way to keep things interesting. Oh, and the score is pretty great too. I forgot to look up who did it, but good job. So yeah, I enjoyed this thing a lot. It didn't really do anything new, and the direction was just kinda there, didn't stand out in any way. But overall I don't have that many complaints, and the ones I have are just really nitpicks. Like the one American woman's accent. I'm not really sure if it was actually terrible, or if a strong southern accent just felt jarring and out of place among all the British accents. Anyway, that one did throw me for a loop there for a minute. But narratively or from a technical standpoint, I don't really have anything bad to say about this. From start to finish, I just enjoyed it and had a very good time with it. And as I said, it just put me in a really good mood. And a lot of that has to do with the main character. She's just so strong-minded and independent, and doesn't let other people tell her how to live her life. Even when things go south, she always just picks herself up and keeps doing her thing. And she does it without coming across as arrogant or unlikable too. I love that character. But there's also a lot of other things in this that kept the story interesting. There's a lot of layers to it, like the whole relationship to her husband, and her career as a writer. I mean, it's based on a world-famous author, but I don't really want to spoil anything for those who didn't know any of the details. So let's just say it's a pretty interesting and elaborate dynamic they've got going on. And that's really kept me engaged the whole time. It's a well thought out movie. So would I recommend it? Absolutely. Unless you're one of those weird people who hate Keira Knightley. So check it out. Or don't. After all, this isn't the 19th century, and I'm definitely not your husband.